Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have finished exploring 6.3 100% yesterday. We did like a huge chunk of it yesterday. I think I total streamed for like 8+ hours on Sunday just to get it done, so it was a bit tiring. But anyways, now that we have done it all 100%, I have had a day to kind of like think it over and put together a video where I discuss this content and my experience fully. So just like I did in 6.2, we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So first and foremost, let's start with the good. The good thing I can mention is the boss design. Overall, I'm quite happy with the bosses because all of them were kind of challenging. Each and every single one of them had more so some sort of approach that you kind of have to get in, and all of them are definitely doable. This time we had no Mr. Sinister boss or the champion boss, which is completely pass-fail basis. Closest we can get to that is Iron Man Infinity War on this Arc Overload node, where if you do start to mess up in those like final 15%, that will be a really tough time to get him down. But so long as you have like a true strike champion, you can still chip away at him. So like Corvus with Proximus Energy or whoever. Void works fantastic. There are plenty of solutions. And all in all 6 bosses I think presented interesting challenges. Required some kind of subset of niche counters, but there were more than like a couple. Therefore I do like the fact that all of these bosses are hard, do require you to think into the kind of like game of it, but you can find counters for every single one of them. Like Medusa, any prominent bleeder will do. Nick Fury, again, you can use that empowered immunity to push him to 2 bars of power. Like I one-shotted him pretty much like Goldpool and Corvus and some other guys. Havoc, there's plenty of solutions for that guy as well. And then we have Iron Man Infinity War, where we have the True Strike options, where we have like the Void, Aegon, Corvus, there's plenty of that as well. Mysterio, you can pretty much use any champion and kind of chip him down. Captain America Infinity War, you basically need to be able to tank several level 3s and you can get that fight done. So yes, I do think that the bosses were overall success. The second thing that I have listed in good column for this piece of content is that every single quest was no more and no less than 6 paths each. And that was refreshing. That was extremely pleasant to see. And 6 path seems kind of like perfect because it's not too little, it's not too much. And in comparison, we can compare, let's say, to 625. I believe 625 has 10 different paths, and you had to fight that Mordo with the toll gate, which was awful boss design once again before. And yeah, so we have 4 gated paths and 6 non-gated paths, so that makes a total of 10. So we can definitely see that here was a drastic decrease of the paths, and that means you have to fight the bosses less and you don't feel that the content is dragging as much, and whenever you finish a path you kind of feel that you have made more meaningful progress towards exploration. So I definitely do like that. I think it's a win. I think they should keep it at that in 6.4 as well, and 6 path is perfect in my opinion. And obvious another change from 6.2 in this case was that there were absolutely no gates. No class gates, no rarity gates, which is also something that's extremely welcoming. You are able to kind of utilize your full 5 and 6 star roster. However, this comes with a bit of grain of salt there and a bit of kind of like terms and conditions applied, because each lane has extremely specific nodes. And I'm going to talk about it a bit later on as well, but here I will list the fact that there are no gates, I suppose, in like a plus column and a good column, but the nodes themselves on the path were largely basically discounting 95% of your roster, and were really kind of stretching the depth of your arsenal of weapons, should you say, when it comes to actually exploring the quest, because there is a lot of really difficult and tricky nodes on every single path that do require very specific kind of solutions. So even though technically there were no gates, they did an extremely harsh job when it came to limiting your options when it comes to fully exploring the content, but still it's definitely better than having all of these gates and then limiting your options even further. So even though it is very roster specific and demanding content, at least you're able to kind of like synergize and bring whatever rarity you have, which is much better. So definitely applaud them for that. An additional thing that I wanted to say is the fourth good thing about this piece of content is quite simply that I did enjoy the fact that for most part in this content you were free to kind of troubleshoot and find your most suitable solutions. There are some exceptions where there are basically no options whatsoever, but for most part of the content you were kind of free to choose whether to use some of those boosts and rely on them, or to rely on specific champions, or kind of like think your ways through the matchups. And it felt like a bit of game of chess, which at times I stubbornly refused to play and sometimes just kind of went head on and used a couple of extra revives and so on. But it definitely overall felt kind of like find the right champion for the right matchup game, which overall I do enjoy. I think it's a very well designed idea if it's executed properly. Unfortunately, there were some aspects of certain fights where this fell short for sure and where they overdid it, but overall as an idea I did like it. I did like the fact that you were kind of allowed to troubleshoot within your roster, and the fact that there were in fact a couple of kind of like suitable solutions, whether it came to, I don't know, dealing with taunts. You can quake it, you can Namor it, or you can rely on a boost, and so you can have 3 different kind of like subsets for it, or obviously Omega Red and some other options, but that's kind of the point. You could choose how you're gonna approach those lanes. But now we are going to move about the bad. And oh boy, we have some bad and we have some ugly stuff. Now, first of all, I have listed in the bad is the health pools and attack. So let's compare the health pool of 635 to 625. As we know that 625 was one of the most frustrating, long, difficult quests ever. It was arguably the hardest quest in Chapter 6. However, in 635, our health pool is 356k and 16,000 attack. And that's on a first node. The bosses were 500k plus and 20k attack. So that's huge. And it's also, I feel, a huge increase. So if you're going to drop down to 625, for instance, and we're just going to teleport to any of the first nodes, let's check out what are the attacks and health pool there. And I feel that this increase was just too massive. They kind of overdid it a bit. And they just got carried away, I suppose. You'd expect the opponents to scale up, right? Obviously, it has to. It's more difficult content. But not by that much. We can see that the health pool went from basically 205k to 350k, so that's massive 75% increase, something like that. That's huge. 150k more health on a regular opponent, plus 10k more attack. Attack has gone up by more than 100%. That, I believe, is just too much. They scaled it too high, too quickly, and that's definitely not good. I think they well overdid it. I think this was the biggest health and attack increase we had seen from chapter to chapter, like ever, even proportionally, because the PIs, the attack, the health, the length of the fights definitely felt like it's too long, it's dragging too high. And basically, if you were not using rank 5 5-star champion on suicides or boosts and suicides, every single fight just went into overtime, as it feels, and you basically got, I'm not gonna say bored of the fight while you're still fighting it, but you started up the fight energetic, happy that your plan is working or you're able to deal with the node, and then it just felt like it's dragging too long even using your rank 5 5-star champions. What's even more kind of tricky, as we can see that here, I'm gonna select a team of my highest PI champions while I have suicides on, for instance, right? So these are basically top prestige, top champions, whatever. And even all of these don't meet the recommended PI requirement. And this is typically being based off opponents' health pools and attack. So that recommended PI. So these are basically 5 of the highest prestige PI champions while I have Suicide Masteries on. And they don't even meet the recommended PI requirement. that definitely kind of seems off. It seems that they are almost kind of intended this content to be run with like rank 3 6-stars, which we do not have available. So yeah, definitely I think it's a mess up. I actually think that they didn't, well, possibly they didn't realize that they're doing, or how big of a difference it's going to be there, but it's huge. It's the opponents are just far too chunky for the fights to be enjoyable. Fights seem to be dragging. Each and every single fight essentially seems somewhat like a Realm of Legend fight. And since it is really roster demanding piece of content, you often, most of the players who are going to be clearing it will have to rely on like rank 4 champions, or occasionally even at some rank 3 champion if you will need some really specific counter. And these fights is just going to last forever and ever. And yeah, that's a huge minus in that column. As a second minus, I'm going to list the entire boost system. I'll be honest, I did not like that boost experience, that boost whole kind of like, because A, there are far too many to remember all of them. You basically literally have to take notes or print out, or I had an iPad where I kept it in front of me to kind of like read through them. Because there are 6 quests, there are like 3 boosts for each quest. There's like 18 boosts, and each of those 18 boosts only affects one class and is meant for like 1 or 2 specific lanes. And it's just a messy experience. Like Act 5, we had these locked maps, which essentially didn't do nothing except made it more annoying for us, because we had to use some sort of third-party map or description or something. And in this case, it's kind of similar thing that you don't want to be playing video game and having to take notes at the same time or look up notes, right? It's not a history exam that you are meant to be studying for extremely hard. And you had this feeling where you kind of were forced into constantly reminding yourself this additional information, which boosts are where, to go and read it up. And I think it's not a good design at all. I don't think it's healthy. I think there are many people who are gonna kind of like skim over these boosts, and if possible at all won't use them, or will forget about using them, and therefore will end up being a lot more frustrated at this piece of content than I should. And there is a simple solution that we could have used. Instead of having these boosts that are meant for like these couple of specific lanes, we could have simply had additional node saying here, for instance, all skilled champions, blah 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 blah, and give that boost there. So you could put that boost as a node here, and that would be as simple as that. You would not have to worry about forgetting it. It would be there always for you to read and see. Obviously there is a downside of it, because Kabam then couldn't sell you these boosts, and you couldn't spend your units to acquire them, or you wouldn't be forced to rush through in an hour of a lane because your boost is expiring. But that would make so much more sense. It would be so much more civil and easy how to clear these lanes. Just add that additional node. That's it. Because you design these boosts very specifically intended for these specific lanes. Why don't just add it as a node? And therefore nobody would have to go and look it up. Nobody could forget about it and stuff like that. So I think that is what should have been done, because those boosts are really, really specific. They only affect always one class, and they offer you an extra solution to otherwise a really tricky node combination. Why not add it as a node? It would be so much better. Just let's be real. Do you really need every player to spend those 300 units to buy those boosts or collect them? I don't know, man. Those boosts is just a huge fail. The keys were a fail, and the boosts are even bigger one, I feel. And yeah, so didn't like them. I don't think they worked. It's not that I absolutely hated them, I just didn't like them at all. And another thing that I have listed as bad is that with or without these boosts, this content really stretches your roster. And I just don't mean in terms of whether you have a power control champion and whether you have an immune champion. No, it stretches to a point whether you have an immune champion that can deal shock and is of certain class kind of stuff, and so on and so forth, because it literally narrowed down to some specific fights to like a couple of champions that you can use. And what's worse, because all of these lanes were kind of like the same node combination for the most part, that pretty much meant that unless you have pretty much every 5-star, and you are lucky to have one 5-star that answers a specific problem here, you're gonna have to keep reviving him again and again and use health pots, because if there are like 5 champions or that fit the build total, chances are you're only going to have 1 or 2 of them ranked up, and that means the rest of the 3 spots in your team are going to be perfectly useless dragging along. And these fights, I felt, went far too specific. It just felt that vast majority of my roster was disabled in a point where I couldn't use them, I couldn't bring them along, or if I did, there was absolutely no point in me taking them along, because these nodes went so specific and so punishing that I had to have kind of like a perfect exact champion combination and perfect exact champion answers. And yes, I mentioned before, the good thing is that we could have had multiple options, but at the same point, because the entire lane demands it, you were forced to use the champion again and again and again, and despite having, let's say, 4 healthy champions, you were forced to rely on the one champion over and over again in the course of entire lane. Occasionally it could be 2 champions and so on, and I definitely did not like that. It kind of felt that you're not utilizing your team or questing team. It just felt that you're solely standing on the legs of one champion, one specific piece of utility, which whenever you messed up, you immediately had to heal up, or whenever you messed up, you had to revive. And I don't think that's kind of like a healthy piece of content, whereas like all of these lanes had exactly the same node combinations throughout. For instance, if you went into a Caltrops lane and all of the other kind of nodes, you had to have entire team of bleed immune champions, right? You couldn't kind of have a couple Caltrops nodes in the middle. So I don't know, I did not definitely enjoy this kind of like stretched out reliance on specific utility that A, tested your roster, and B, made vast majority of your questing team fairly useless. And yeah, that is definitely listed as bad. But now we're gonna get into the spicier, the uglier part. And number 1 worst thing possibly in this quest, more so than anywhere else, I had never in my life seen so much damage just because you want to play the game. Everywhere you turn around, there was every single quest pretty much, I think, had some sort of thorns in. There were like Caltrops, Biohazard, there was this Void from Variant 3 with long distance relationship, whereas when you hit Void you basically die because you get debuffs on yourself. There were these Ghast lanes, Prime Ghast, also from Variant, where if opponent evades you get fatigue debuff and you just take damage. Then there were the same thing with fatigue debuffs, I think, with Crumbled, where if you are close to opponent, you get a debuff. If you hit opponent while you have the debuff on, you take damage again. And that seemed to be kind of like the name of the game in every quest for literally kind of like half of the time. Whereas you took some fun and interactive damage for trying to play. Like, you basically, that was your mission. You had to find a way how to avoid damage being taken back to you. The fights weren't hard, it wasn't challenging, it was just annoying. It felt like a piss take, because it's kind of like, unless you have a perfect solution, you're gonna die. Like, not because you get hit, not because you messed up, not because you missed an intercept or ate a special attack, but because you entered the fight without exact champion that you needed. Like, yeah, in between all of these thorns and everything else, it just felt kind of a feeling you get when you're trying your hardest not to get punched by somebody who's actively throwing punches at you. And so just dodging is like kind of like, okay, Thorns damage, so I can bypass it with Namor. Okay, so I have this damage, so I can bypass it here. So I have another type of damage coming my way. I need to use some different champion. And that's what half of this quest felt like. Dodging Kabam's fun and interactive damage, which we received for simply wanting to play the game. And the second half of it felt like trying to be able to land my damage, because everything else aside from that was basically stuff like Pleasure to Burn, the equivalent of Pleasure to Burn to Poison to Shock to whatever not, because there was so much damage mitigation throughout the course, all sorts of like crit resistances, huge armors, weaknesses, power shields, these acid wash, Pleasure to Burn, and what have you. And then you again had to kind of like bob and weave at the same time, not taking damage from whatever Kabam's throwing at you, and trying your hardest to kind of find your one opening to actually deal a decent amount of damage. And in a lot of cases, the champions you normally would like to use or have had ranked up until now were basically useless, because you needed immunity, special type of debuff, and then you needed some other special qualities in order to be played. It's just comical to the point. This is not a quest, largely just lets you play. Like, if you want to play a quest, like when you go in Uncollected, when you go in like, I don't know, even 6.1, this isn't a quest where you can go and play and test and mess about. This is a quest where you need to fulfill very, very specific conditions. A, to survive. B, to land any sort of meaningful damage whatsoever. And I do not like that. I didn't feel like I'm playing the game. I felt much more like I'm answering a quiz. And that was not great. Additionally, wait, we're gonna go to Overhang. I think Kabam well overdid it with some extremely specific paths, where only way you could get through was if you had a very specific set of champions, plus you knew about that specific boost. And that is extremely ugly kind of practice, because if we're going to take a look at here, let's see, we have an Iceman, right? So this is in 632. So inevitability. Special attacks are rare, but their activation is stunning. What does it basically mean? It means, first of all, Kabam is kind of like trying to be funny. What they're trying to say is that they have reduced defensive reduced defensive power gain. But whenever they do land a special attack, whenever they do launch a special attack, I should say, you get stunned. So that's what it is. Whenever opponent launches a special attack, you get stunned. Then you have encroaching stun. You get stunned every 20 seconds unless you are in the middle of special attack animation, and Biohazard. And Iceman, for instance, on it. So now let's think this one through, right? So you need bleed immunity. You need immunity to Cold Snap, and you need a power control in theory in order to be able to prevent Iceman from throwing special attacks. Otherwise you're just gonna get stunned and wrecked. Plus you have this huge skill requirement of timing your special attacks. So in theory, can you name any specific champion that has Cold Snap immunity, bleed immunity at the minimum, and a power control? To a degree, maybe Iron Man Infinity War. To a degree, maybe Warlock, because he has some power control, but definitely not effective enough to prevent opponent from launching special attacks ever, right? And that's pretty much it. And okay, there are many other encounters obviously on this path. Domino, always fun and interactive. Omega Red, whatever. Rogue. Colossus, which is a beefcake. And this is like basically unpassable path for most part, unless you're just gonna revive your way through. Only way you can get through it is obviously if you have a very, very specific boost that, let me just find it. I think it was improved subroutines. Tech champions, whenever you're protected from bleed or poison by your immunity, you become stun immune for 6 seconds. And that lets you bypass the stunning things. What was it called? That lets you bypass the inevitable. That lets you bypass both stun nodes basically. And yeah, so without that boost, you'd essentially be absolutely screwed. And I can't possibly support a design like this, especially where Kabam said that these boosts are not mandatory, but they will help you. on nodes on paths like this, it's a huge fail. You either have that boost, or you better have a spare Odin in your pocket, because that's the minimum amount of units you're going to use running through this. It's just kind of like as simple as that. And this is not optional. This is not you'll have it slightly easier time, or you'll have a better chance of completing it. No, this is use that boost and then have your specific tech immune champions in order to be able to compete here. So this means A, you must know about this boost, B, you must know that you have to use it exactly here, C, you must have your Sentinels, Warlocks, Darkhawks, OG Visions, or what have you. At the same time, Sentinel, I believe, is pretty much mandatory here because of Iceman. Otherwise, you're just gonna eat that damage, or you're gonna have to kind of revive through with like Ghost, or I don't know. And yeah, and this is not optional. This is not making it slightly easy. This is flat out demanding to use that one particular boost here. Otherwise, you're just done for it. Otherwise, you're gonna want to throw your phone against the wall a couple fights in. And that's a really ugly piece of design. That's something they should have never let happen. That's pretty disgusting and disturbing to a degree. Because, again, they could have put a node. They could have put that boost as a node here, and you would know what you're getting into. And the fact that, again, this certain node combination is throughout the entire path. So it's not like you have 1 or 2 fights to get through. It's the entire lane you have to clear, only relying on that boost and having specific champions. And yeah, it kind of really infuriated me, especially because it was advertised kind of like, you're just going to have a slightly easier time, or not going to have to need. Yes, you do need them. You need to be aware of those boosts. And you need to use at least a couple of them, like pretty much 100%. And now, the most ugly part. And I was actually contemplating to make a separate video, and I still might, depending how hard I cuss out in this one. If I don't feel that I will have unloaded all my emotions in this video, I'll make a separate video for this abomination of content design. So we have Mysterio on Acid Wash. Now, which rotten piece of a-hole brain figured out this to be a good idea? It's an absolute, I don't know, shitbaggery, sorry. It's stupid. Take a guess, everyone, while you're watching this video. How many counters this Mysterio has? And there are 2. There's King Groot, and there's Man-Thing. So for those of you who are confused why this dude is so difficult, let me explain. So Acid Wash basically states that unless you have a poison debuff or a passive poison on an opponent, they take 90% less damage from all sources any way, shape or form. So assuming these opponents are about 300k health, if you do not have poison, basically they are 3 million health. Basically that's Labyrinth of Legends type of opponent, plus his Mysterio, right? Because you would only be dealing 10% of your damage. So only way to realistically deal with this guy is to have an active poison. The poison can be ticking for like 1, but you just have to have it there, right? So first of all, we don't have that many champions with poison opponents to begin with, but that wouldn't be the biggest deal, because we do have some. We have options, and that would be perfectly realistic, kind of like to see that kind of node, right? We saw Do You Bleed, there might as well be like Acid Wash to a degree. And however, here is a trick. Mysterio is poison immune unless his helmet is cracked. His helmet can be cracked in 2 ways and 2 ways only, and that is either A, by being knocked down by Spider-Verse champion, or B, by having an armor break debuff placed on him. Now, so what does that imply? That implies that you either need a Spider-Verse champion that inflicts poison, and there are none. There's literally no Spider-Verse champions that can inflict poison on opponent. So that group falls out. Or B, you need to be able to place an armor break debuff on opponent, additionally to a poison debuff on opponent in order to be able, well, yeah, in order for him not to be poison immune. right? Well, guess how many champions can place armor break and poison on opponent currently? There are 2. King Groot, which hits like a 7-year-old Girl Scout, even as a 6-star for instance, and the fight in itself against Mysterio and him power draining and him kind of like pushing, it is incredibly tricky thing. So what you need to do with King Groot first is land your level 1 while you have a Fury buff active. Once you have done that, you need to go for your level 2s, but at the same time you only pretty much need to bait out Mysterio's level 1s or you're gonna get power drained. And yeah, so there's that. Not to mention the lackluster damage from King Groot, and that would arguably be quicker if you just used any high damage champion and pushed through this 3 million health instead, because you're dealing 10%. Or you can use a Man-Thing. Man-Thing places arm break and poison easily. Man-Thing is a fantastic option. I use Man-Thing to deal with this champion. I in fact ranked for Man-Thing for this counter. And yeah, Man-Thing can deal with this fight just fairly easy. Do a combo, get to your level 1, drop a level 1, drop a heavy attack, rinse repeat, Mystic Dispersion, so even if he power drains you now and then, you can still throw your special attacks and you're going to be dealing damage and everything's going to be fine. It's 1 champion in a game. Now, there is a boost that is available to all Cosmic Champions in 6.3. The Planetary Might, the one that Kabam nerfed already, but that boost would technically give any Cosmic Champion an ability to armor break opponent. However, if you take a look at the list of all the Cosmic Champions in game, currently there's only 1 champion that can place a poison debuff on opponent, and that is before mentioned King Groot, who doesn't need that boost in the first place to do so. So still, even with that boost, there are no other Cosmic Champions that can deal with it. So literally, this is a champion that you either have a Man-Thing, or better, have at least free half an hour to dedicate to this fight. Because chances are, vast majority of you, if you are going to be pushing for 100% exploration, will end up just dealing 10% damage against this guy and spending about half an hour, bunch of resources depending how many times you mess up or you don't mess up. Well, that's on you. Combination. I have spoken in past how much I hate all of these 90% damage reduction nodes in general. I think they're extremely ill-designed control mechanisms on players' roster and wallet. But that put aside, putting a Mysterio who is pretty much poison immune is just a spit in the face. Trust me when I tell you this, whichever sadistic asshole plays this node combination with Mysterio in this lane is laughing in your face. This feels much more than an ill-designed prank by a Kabam employee that was about to get fired and wanted to get one last piece of douchebaggery in before he had to clean up his desk. Now, if I were in any Kabam employee shoes right about now, I would urge whoever has the powers that be to replace this Mysterio with some other champion on this node if you want to leave Acid Wash, or replace Acid Wash with something like Pleasure to Burn or whichever other node that works similarly but does not rely on this one specific immunity. Because fuck me, what kind of piece of shit you have to be to place a champion that has 2 possible counters in a content that requires you to use only 5 and 6-star champions. At this point, Kabam is literally punishing you for not having every single 5-star champion in game. And yeah, I think that will pretty much finish up my the good, the bad, and ugly. I think this is one of the ugliest things I have seen in this game. I think it's just childish. I think it's laughing in your face. I don't think any self-respectful game designer would have the kind of like shamelessness to place this in a game and not call it an April Fool's. It's sad, it's silly, it's stupid. It should never have had happened. It should never have had went through a beta test. I don't know whether Kabam listened to any beta tester feedback, or everybody in beta test was fine with it, which I hope they were not. Otherwise, then, well, fuck them too. But I don't know, man. This is just awful. Overall, I must say though that if we compare the difficulties, I feel it's about on par with 6.2, but largely because of the huge health pools. It does make you feel a bit more free in your choice of the characters, in your approach, and definitely seemed a bit more enjoyable. I would not necessarily say it's easier or much easier. I think it's pretty much the same, minus the champion boss. Yeah, other than that, I think it's a better designed piece of content than 6.2 for sure, though. Not without its minuses, as we discovered in here, but I think all in all, it's kind of a step in the right direction, except with examples like this and a few other things. But anyways, let me know what you guys think, how you guys tried it out yet, how do you feel about this piece of content, and yeah, leave a comment. How you finished it, how you completed it, when do you plan on tackling it, and yeah, I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya.